Welcome to Walking the Earth. Today we are in Lumbini, Nepal, in the Terai region, at the Lumbini Sacred Garden, where Siddhartha Gautama, later to be known as Shakyamuni Buddha, is said to have been born in a structure underneath this structure, I should say. He was born in, this was actually a forest of sal trees, according to the story. And his mother, Maya Devi, she was on her way to her family's hometown in her kingdom, which is not far from here. And on the way, it was summertime and it was very hot, and she became quite exhausted. She is compassionate and realizes that it must be overworking the horses, and they came to this sacred spring in the sal forest, and it was a very beautiful location with flowering trees, and the water was fresh and clean. This is still a spring-fed pond as far as I'm aware, and she came to cool herself and to bathe in the waters. Now she's very heavy with child, and according to the story, she bathes in the spring, and then she realizes that she's about to give birth to her child. Now, she had had a very strange dream 10 months before about a six-tusked elephant. I believe he was a white elephant, who brought a pink lotus flower to her in her trunk and placed a baby into her womb. And then she'd forgotten about it until this very moment when she's about to give birth. And then some very strange things happen all at once. I believe she was traveling with her sister, who later is going to become the adoptive mother of Siddhartha Gautama. So she holds on to a sal branch, and she realizes the baby is coming, but the baby doesn't come in a normal, natural way. That somehow there is like some kind of a divine cesarean section where her side opens up, and then the baby comes out of the side without any blood, without any pain, without any mucus, and immediately stands and walks 7 steps. And he declares that this is his final birth and that he will now attain enlightenment and be a Buddha within this very lifetime. So he comes out of her body, not in a natural way, and the mother feels no pain, the side closes up, and so he has announced who he is. There's an earthquake at the same time, and all these miraculous events take place simultaneously, is according to the legend. So including, flower petals coming down, and divine music and lights, and various divine beings come and pay respects. Now what's interesting is she only lives for 7 days after this birth. This new baby that could walk and talk speaks to her and lets her know who he is and what he is going to be engaged in this lifetime, and that she's blessed. So this is a very interesting event. I will have to go look up more detail and give you more detail in the future. But I just wanted to share a little bit about this location. This is supposed to be where it took place. This was a sal forest, so sal trees, and sal trees are interesting. They play an important role in the Buddha story, not only at his birth, but also at a later date when he passes away, not far from here at Kushinagar, which is now in eastern Uttar Pradesh in India, just across from Bihar, and where he passes away between 2 sal trees. And many of the key events in the Buddha's life take place underneath trees. So at the beginning of his life and the end of his life under sal trees, 1 and 2 respectively. If you want to see sal trees in forests, there are many areas you can see them in India and in Nepal, as far as I'm aware, but you could go to a number of the tiger parks, and those are in sal forests, so you can get a sense of the Buddha story. If I were going to write a biography of the Buddha, I would certainly go and spend time in those locations where he had lived and walked and meditated. So we've got the sal forest. Then he sits under a rose apple tree when he's 6 or 7 years old, when his father, who was either a chief or a king of the Shakya people, the Sakya people, he's doing a seasonal divine plowing ceremony where the first plowing of the year is done by the leader. And while he's doing that, young Siddhartha sits under a rose apple tree, and he starts observing the breath spontaneously, and when he does, he goes into a state of samadhi, or calm concentration. And so he has his first jhana experience. He enters into the first jhana, which is an absorption meditative state. And so he goes into this state, and I'll discuss this in another video, but that was under a rose apple tree. If you've ever been to Southeast Asia, there's a good chance if you went to a fruit vendor, you ate a rose apple. They resemble a pear, and they have a very nice aromatic smell. They're kind of crunchy and crispy like a pear, and that's the closest thing I would compare it to. And so we'll discuss the rose apple in another video, but then also the Buddha then, or Siddhartha Gautama, the meal he eats before attaining enlightenment, after he's been spending 6 years basically destroying his body, trying to be, eat very little, he's fasting intensively, doing what are called mortifications, very severe penances on his body, like standing on one leg all day, yogic practices that you still see among sadhus in Southern Asia, and that have also historical connections within the ascetic Zuhud tradition of the Sufis and other Muslims. And so you see this instance where he goes and sits under a banyan tree, and then someone brings him a meal that is going to be the meal that's going to strengthen him to go and walk to the Bodhi tree at Bodh Gaya, where he sits and attains enlightenment. So there are these trees, and the Buddha regularly sits under important trees. So it's very interesting to acknowledge the role of trees within this tradition. And we see it begin here at Lumbini, in the Lumbini Grove, here at this spring where his mother bathed before giving birth to him in a miraculous manner, very similar to many of the stories of the prophets from the various Abrahamic traditions. So we'll go into those connections in a compare and contrast at a later point. But I wanted to share this about the spring water, and about his birth, and about this location. So until next time, be happy and be healthy.